This painting by Marc Chagall shows Ruth, Naomi, and Orpah clinging closely together. Naomi is in the center as she represents the center of the household after all three women's husbands died. According to the website Women of the Bible, the color brown is very dominant over other colors because it helps to convey the mood of pain and sorrow all these women share because of their deceased husbands. In the background, there is a red sun that stands out in the color brown that our group interpreted as something bright and better in the women's future and that God would work in their lives.
The genre of the Book of Ruth was an Israelite narrative. It was part of the Ketuvim. In our research, we found that Boaz means in his strength. The significance of his name is important because it foreshadows how he really helped Ruth in her time of need. Ruth means friendship, and the significance of her name shows her dedication to her mother-in-law Naomi. Although she was family, she had a strong friendship with her and was very loyal. Naomi means pleasant. The significance was that Naomi was a very happy person with her 2 sons and her husband. She was living comfortably on her husband's farm and had a strong faith in God. Later in the chapter, Naomi changes her name to Mara, which means bitter. The significance of her name is that she changes it once all her family dies and she becomes bitter with God.
The Book of Ruth opens with a description of the family of Ruth and a summary of the chapter and the past events of ancient Judea. It discusses the famine when the judges ruled and how Naomi and her husband left for Moab with their sons. Naomi's husband died and her sons married Orpah and Ruth. However, her sons later passed away as well and she was left alone. Naomi then set out to return to the country of Judah where she came from with her 2 daughter-in-laws, but with compassion in her heart she told them to return to their native land of Moab. The women protested and said they wished to accompany Naomi back to her land. She wanted them to return to their families so that they may find another husband again someday. Orpah agreed to set out to return from Moab. However, Ruth clung to Naomi and went on to monologue about how she would be faithful to Naomi for the rest of her days. Naomi realized she could not sway Ruth, so she agreed to let her come on the journey. The 2 women arrived in Bethlehem and the whole town was uneasy upon Naomi's return. Naomi told the people to no longer call her Naomi but to call her Mara because of how bitter she had become. Her and Ruth remained in Bethlehem.
The narrative of Ruth takes place during the tribal period, when the judges ruled over Judea according to Coogan. We learned in class on October 22nd that these 4 books fit more specifically into the Iron Age, which takes place between 1200 and 1000 BCE. Ruth was King David's great-grandmother, living 2 generations before his rule. There are several events and details present in the Book of Ruth that are significant to the Hebrew Bible and early Christianity. Ruth herself was a Moabite, a foreigner in the society she lived in. This could have been embarrassing for her and for the line of Jesus that followed her. Yet Jesus is a direct descendant from her family and has this Moabite heritage. The fact that this story features 2 women is significant because at this time they would have been part of the patriarchal society that made women dependent upon men. This is why Naomi worked so hard to set Boaz and Ruth up. They needed his wealth and stability to survive. The event of Naomi changing her name to a new name of bitterness brings up the question of God's sovereignty that we saw when we looked at Job's life. We see Naomi struggle with the trials that life has brought her, and the reader finds himself asking what God's purpose in all of this sadness is. After her suffering and compassionate decision to stay with her mother-in-law, Ruth is rewarded by marrying Boaz and ultimately becoming part of the divine family line of Christ. A key part of Ruth's path to marrying Boaz was her participation in gleaning the fields. This was an act described in Deuteronomy 24:19, which commands the people of God to reap your harvest in your field and forget a sheaf in the field. You shall not go back to get it. It shall be left for the alien, the orphan, and the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all your undertakings. In conclusion, we would like to bring up a key parallel Coogan writes about in his text. The loyalty and faithfulness conveyed by Ruth to Naomi is an example of Yahweh's constant dedication to his people. Though there are trials we face and times that he does not seem present, God's love for us is unwavering and forever present.